Hello folks and welcome. So the Xfce desktop for Linux Mint, I'm going to talk about automated backups to USB devices. USB hard drives, USB sticks, doesn't matter which one. They both work the same way. So I've done several videos like this on for other desktops, so I decided to do one for the Xfce desktop for Mint. So welcome folks. All of my videos are more than 2 minutes on my YouTube site. All of my videos contain chapters or timelines. I do encourage that you subscribe and also go check out my About section. One of the comments that I make in there is Linux is for every age. The other thing about my community tab are some tips on keyword searches, because my database is currently almost up to 100 videos. My last YouTube site was 450. So when it becomes cumbersome to search for material, then using keyword searches is the way to go. In either case, folks, one more time, welcome. So I have my file manager sitting over here that I'm going to open, and of course this is Thunar, your file manager. So Mr. Mark is our user for today. Mr. Mark has lots of files, and Mr. Mark even has a work folder and some music and pictures or wallpapers, that kind of stuff. Mr. Mark also has a USB backup device, in other words, a portable hard drive plugged into a USB 3 cable with a blue light on it. You can substitute that also with a USB stick. I'll talk briefly about formatting a little bit later. So it is currently blank. So what I'm going to talk about today, and I'll walk you through the whole process, is doing this automated. In other words, you can sync up your folders into these USB devices by using launchers and scripts. And before you hear those words and run away, I encourage and challenge you to watch the video in its entirety. I can pretty much teach this to anyone. So, and I'll use less technical jargon. So these are launchers. And basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to basically just double click on this thing. And what it's doing is currently copying that music folder into that USB device, and you can see all the subfolders to go with it. Now the beauty of this thing is, first of all, I'll explain this 200 gig USB backup is inside of an enclosure. It's a plastic enclosure that, that thing does not only music, but 2 folders. But more importantly, that hard drive is in a plastic enclosure with a blue light on it that blinks whenever the drive is doing whatever, like writing or reading. And that little enclosure I bought for $12 on Amazon and threw my own hard drive in there. So if you got a spare hard drive, you can do that. If not, how about a big USB stick? It's handled the same way. So when you're formatting these things, just click your Mint menu and type in USB and look for the stick formatter. It doesn't matter if it's a stick or a hard drive. When it's connected to a USB cable, it's still considered a USB stick format in this context. Format USB stick, or in this case, hard drive. Okay? FAT32 is the most compatible everywhere. FAT32 stands for File Allocation Table. If you format that with extension 4, just be aware that you need to address permissions. Okay? If you're doing that. The other thing I'm going to make mention of, change the name to something that doesn't have spaces in it. Like USB backup is good. Or if you want to do it this way, USB 1, USB 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want to call them. But you want that FAT32 to be compatible with Microsoft Windows or Mac, then use FAT32, File Allocation 32. If you don't, then you choose the other 3, XFAT, NTFS, and extension 4. Just be aware that when you're using Linux extensions, extension 4 for instance, you're going to need to deal with permissions. FAT32 is probably the easiest thing to work with, and more importantly, I can take my music and pictures and open them on a Microsoft or Mac machine. So far, so good? So what is the magic that creates this? Well, this one is called a launcher, but that launcher points to a file. A launcher is just by right-clicking on your screen and creating a launcher, and you fill in the boxes. You give it a name, a comment if you want. Comments are optional, and a command. And possibly an icon. If not, it'll become a gear. All right, so far so good. I'm going to create a launcher down here at the bottom that does exactly that. just to show you one example of a launcher. I'm going to type in 3 little letters, LOG. This is already built into your Xfce distribution. Create logout launcher, and then hit create. Double click on it, and that becomes your shutdown, restart, logout, and blah, blah, blah. Right click, open with create launcher on panel, sends it in the corner, and now you have an extra button to log out of your system as a bonus. Okay? So I'm going to recreate this one here in a second, but I want to point to the file that actually makes it work. So that's done with the magic of scripts. And I have my folder called My Scripts. It's just a made-up name. And my user today, again, is Mr. Mark. Mr. Mark has lots of files. And there are 3 scripts that I created. Actually, I created one and duplicated them and then changed the names. So you can do this rather easily. So this one's probably the easiest one to explain, Mr. Mark's work. May I run that first? But I'm going to delete the folders on purpose, so I'll let you see that it's empty. So right now, it just duplicated Mr. Mark's work, complete with files and folders. Mr. Mark's work looks like that. So the magic of this script is this. I'm going to open it for you. It's just 2 lines. As long as you can type that word right there, you're good to go. Let me explain what that does. So I call it the bin bash statement. Bash stands for born again shell. The pound key can be found on your top keyboard. If you press the shift key, the number 3 becomes a pound if you press shift. The exclamation point, if you hold down your shift key and hit the number 1, it becomes that. So let me actually do this for you. I'll click a couple of lines down and I'll press the shift key and the number 3. It produces a pound, and then the shift key and the number 1 produces that symbol, exclamation point. The / is found normally next to your shift key, around your enter key somewhere. And you know, some keyboards are slightly different, but anyways, the / and then just type in BIN, and then again / bash. Born again shell is what that stands for. If you can type that, you can create a script rather easily. Okay, so far so good? Okay, so that's the bin bash statement. I do recommend that you watch these videos on a large screen, by the way. I also recommend that you look at my timelines. If you don't want to subscribe, at least come back to it, do a screenshot. But more importantly, I do recommend that you subscribe. It's the easiest way to rewatch these videos. Let's tackle the next statement. Do you know what Rsync is? Some folks don't. Rsync is actually being used probably by you right now. So if you activated time shift, you're using Rsync, more than likely. I'm going to open this up, put in my password. So basically, when your wizard started with time shift, when you installed Linux Mint Xfce desktop, you were more likely asked to activate this. And the first statement it states right here is Rsync. That's exactly what I'm using. Except this is backing up your system files. All I'm doing is backing up my personal files to that USB device. All right, so that's what Rsync does. I recommend that you look this up on the internet also to get a better definition for yourself. Now, the Rsync has a lot of options. So Rsync --A is what I'm using, the archive option. Archive meaning backup. Then I throw in another space, and then I put a tilde in there. What's a tilde? Okay, I'm going to hit a couple of lines down. I'm going to hit my shift key and press the key next to the number 1 key on the top row of my keyboard, and produces that symbol. That's called a tilde. So that tilde represents my home folder, in this case Mr. Mark's home folder. And this is Mr. Mark's work folder. Mr. Mark has several folders, you agree? So that is pointing to this folder right here. That is my source that I'm going to copy. So it's tilde, meaning home folder, Mr. Mark's home folder, and Mark work, as in this case. I could change this up and put music in here. I'll show you some of the other scripts in here. They'll have different names in them. And after I put that in there, it has to be spelled exactly the same. I put a space. Because if you don't put a space, your script has no idea where your beginning and ending are. In other words, the source and the destination. It thinks this is a continuous folder. So if you put a space in there, it tells the script, oh, this is my source, and this is my destination, where I'm sending a copy of this over to. Now you're probably going, well, this is a complex statement. Really? Is it? Take your mouse pointer and point at this. Do you see that yellow box that says /media Mr. Mark /USB backup in uppercase? That's all you need. You type that in there. Forget about the rest of the stuff in brackets that has that bracket /dev on it. Don't need to copy any of that junk. Stuff. That is what you need. That needs to match. If it matches, you're good to go. All right, so I'm going to close that. And it's going to ask me to save it because I punched in some extra characters, but I'm going to close without saving. So let's go back up to the scripts and take a look at these. So I have 3 of these, and they do different things. This one here is my personal backup, and that's this one, Mr. Mark's personal backup, and it has several subfolders: documents, music, pictures, downloads, and Mr. Mark work folder. So I could also eliminate things by just highlighting them and deleting them, and then hit save. And this launcher will still work properly. So let me take a look at this one here, the music backup one, and I'm going to actually remove the pictures one out of it on purpose. Now, do I want to save this before I do this in a separate script? Why don't I do that? So I'm going to hit cancel, right click and copy and paste. And we're going to call this one test 1. Now, since right click, rename, test 1, and rename. All right, so since I copied this from another script, it already has the properties of executing as a program. When you create new scripts, though, they will have this unchecked. You'll get an error if you run a launcher regarding that. It'll say permissions issues. So make sure that you do that. But since I copied that, it automatically did that for me. However, the script, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to eliminate one of these lines, and I'll just do the pictures part. It's still the same name, so I'm going to hit save. But since this script is different from any of the others, I'm going to make a launcher for it. So this is I'm going to make a launcher to tie it into that script. Create launcher, right click. This is very simple to do, folks. Call it whatever you want. I'll call it test 1 to match the name, just to have some fun. And this is going to be backing up. What is it going to be backing up? Music. Backup, music. Does it have to be uppercase or lowercase? It doesn't matter. It's just a comment to USB backup. That way I know what it does. And again, comments are optional. The next line is command. This one's the most important. You need to point to this file. So my file is located in Mr. Mark's documents, my scripts, and it's called test 1, and I'm going to hit open. Now I need to decide, do I want to just live with the gear icon, or do I want to actually give it an icon? Well, I'm going to do no icon. Click that. You can also bring in your own image files. You probably have seen, maybe you have seen my videos from a couple of years ago where I customize menus and stuff, and I have my own personal icon folder, but not today. I'm going to pick something from the system. These are all system icons. So since this is doing music, I'm going to see what we have for music icon. I have lots of options. So let's pick that one. And test 1, music, sure, create, done. Is that what that script does? Let's double check it. Yes, it's going to copy this to USB backup 1, this drive right here. So I'm going to clean it up so you can see this from scratch. So now I'm going to double click on it, and it's already copying music and subfolders. All right, so far so good. All right, so if I altered the icon, so I'm going to actually terminate this. It was still in the process of copying, so I'm going to hit delete, and I'm going to edit this thing. I'm going to right click and edit the launcher and change the icon, or change anything in the name or any of the properties in here. And as soon as you do that, though, you're going to deal with an untrusted launcher. So I'm going to actually change the test one to backup music. Okay, that's what I'm going to just change the name to. Now, since I altered the name or the icon or anything else in between, it's considered an untrusted launcher. And you'll get that box pop up. All you got to do is mark it as executable and it will take off. Because all I did was alter either the icon or the name. And right now it's finished making my backups. The beauty of this is since it works already, I can right click on it and open with Create Launcher on Panel and then right click on it and move it. I can drop it here if I like. Or I can continue moving it by right clicking and finding another spot for it. I'll throw it in between here. Alright, so I'm going to delete this again on purpose, and then I'm going to actually just click on that icon. That's a single click, and it syncs that up. The beauty of this is I'm going to wait until it finishes. So you have 1, 2, 3, 5 albums, right? And all has music inside the albums. So I'm going to go to my music folder for Mark, and I'm going to add another file to it. It could be a file or a folder, it doesn't matter. I'm going to call that A because I can. And I'm going to open that up and I'm going to throw in some gibberish text. Doesn't matter. Just throwing that in there just to have fun. All right, you agree that's a text file. That's a valid text file in Linux. If you are moving this over to a Microsoft machine or a Mac, you more than likely want to rename that with like a.txt, for instance. More importantly, that file is not here until I rerun that script that runs this. In this case, down here or here. So do you want me to do it here or do it hidden? You want to see it, or do you want me to just do it this way? Either way, it's done. All I got to do is, first of all, verify that that A is in here. It's also in here now. So what that, using Rsync, what it's doing here, Rsync says, my script from here, test, it says, go take a look at this music folder and compare it to what's on that device. In this case, the USB backup device. And the script will say, is this folder there? Yes, it is. Don't create it. What's inside the folder? Well, it has these music folders. Did they change in here? No. What's different? I added the A file. Okay, then I'll send the A file to it because these are all the same. No changes were made up here except for the A. That's what makes Rsync fast. It will only sync the stuff that's missing. Versus if you were to go up to Mr. Mark's folder and were to take any of these things and copy them and try to paste them, it's going to complain the folder's already here. And then it'll ask you, do you want to merge the files? Do you want to do something different? You got to do all kinds of thinking for you. And more importantly, you're replacing items manually. This does this thing automatically. All it does is it compares what's in here and compares what's on the device via the script file, via this launcher. The launcher just makes it convenient for me to point at the script. All this is a pointer. Okay, so basically that's all you're doing is double clicking and it syncs the folder. Okay, I'm going to delete it again. Double click on this one. Single click on this one. So far so good. Can I do that with multiple folders? Absolutely. So let me show you the other script here. This is Mark's personal backup. This is a little bit more extensive. It has 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, it's got 5 folders, right? All right, document, music, pictures, downloads, and Mr. Mark work. Now, the reason I threw that in there is to let you see the spelling. So if I misspelled this, this will not sync properly also. That's very important to understand. When you're creating your script files, they need to match the name of your files and folders. In this case, we're just doing folders. Here's the script file. This has to be spelled exactly the same way as my folder. And I don't recommend putting spaces here. I don't recommend putting spaces in your USB devices or your folder names. Otherwise, you got to do some other things. So to make it simple for yourself, put a single name on it. As in my case, I put Mr. Mark Work. And you noticed I mixed uppercase and lower cases. That has to match in here for this to work properly. All right, so this is called Mark Personal Backup. All right, Mr. Mark's Personal Backup is this one right here. And I'm going to actually execute it. And you can start seeing it creating folders. If the folder was already there, it's not going to recreate it. Okay, but it will create the rest of the folders. And you'll see them populate here in a second. So let's look at that one for a second. And now you can see the third folder, and there'll be 2 more. There we go. All right. So all this says is a name and a comment. And the command is pointing to a script file. And that script file is Mark's Personal Backup with an icon on it. Icons are optional. And then you can send that to your panel. Okay, now I'm going to walk this over and move it and stick it next to the other icon. And I'm going to point at it. It says Mr. M Personal Backup to USB Backup. That's this device. Here's the beauty of this. Okay, this has already been copied. So this is documents. So you can see Mr. Mark's backup here, this Mr. Mark Work Backup. I'm going to walk over to his folder and I'm going to create another subfolder. Now, since this is Mr. Mark's home folder in his main folder, this is not reflected in the backup just yet. I'm going to rerun this one. All it did was it went through every one of these folders and checked to see if there's anything different. And it found only one. And it replicated that immediately. Does that make sense to you now? The benefit of using this versus copy and paste stuff, there's no comparison. This does it a lot faster. And more importantly, when you already have your files here and your folders, it doesn't recreate the wheel. It just checks to see if there's a difference. And then if it finds something that it should, let's say you got something in your documents folder, I'll create another text file. I'll call that ABC. I won't put any text into it. But this is my documents in Mr. Mark's folder. Okay, this is documents in Mr. Mark's folder that doesn't have the ABC file in it. So I'm going to rerun that. Now it's in there. It's that quick. It doesn't have to recopy all of these because none of these were changed. Rsync knows the difference. And it only saw that you needed that file. So it threw it into this folder. Because the folder was already created with the existing documents. The only difference was I added this in my main folder and reran the script. So you can see the benefit of having scripts. You can copy them rather easily, even the more complex ones. And then change the tail end of all these statements here. If you decide to change this to a USB stick, all you got to do is change the back end to USB 1 or 2 or 3 and just do that line by line and then hit save and save this as copy 1 or rename that as something that makes sense to you and then create another launcher. So right now I'm going to take copy 1 and I'm going to reduce some of the files in here, and I'll only do documents and maybe another folder. So I'm going to delete that, and I will just do documents and pictures. How's that? So I'll delete that and get rid of the R there and get rid of the space and hit save. Now this is called Mark Personal Backup Copy 1. It doesn't matter what it's called. I'm going to create a launcher for that. I'm going to call that test 2 and just point to the file. So that's that one, and we'll give it an icon. Doesn't matter what it is. Icon is just an icon. I'm going to clear all this and run that script. So right now it's just doing 2 because that's what I told it to do. That script there is running this one here. It's just documents and pictures. So it's finished with all the subfolders in it. All right, creating scripts from scratch is pretty simple. If you want to try this yourself, I will just recommend that you use a text editor and not a word processor. TXT. Open up a text editor, and then you're going to start with, I'm just going to use the example here for you, is I'm going to create another one and pull this out, and then close this, just so you can have a reference. What you want to start off is the pound statement and the exclamation point, /bin, /bash. Hit enter, and then type in rsync space -alpha space tilde, sorry, wrong one, tilde / what do we want to use? How about downloads? Space / media / Mr. Mark, in my case. This will be your user. And then the name of your device. This is where a lot of people go, well, I forgot what it is. That's okay. Open up your file manager, folks. Just take a look at it. This is a lot easier doing it this way. So grab your text file that you're creating and point to that device. Oh, it's called USB backup. Okay, then name it exactly the same. Just remember, this is source and this is destination. All right, you're still not done yet. So if everything matches, you got the proper folder name and the proper device that you're sending it to, and go ahead and hit save as. And then where do you want to save this script? Well, I'm going to stick mine in my my Mark Documents, My Scripts, and I'm going to just call that My Junk. Okay, hit save. All right, so it changes that to blue. So My Junk is a new script. That doesn't have a launcher yet, right? There's one more thing I didn't do to this file, and I'm going to do it as, I'm going to close that without saving because I didn't edit anything. So My Junk currently looks like that. So I'm going to create a launcher for it. And I'm going to call that My Junk. Point to this file. And hit open. And then I'll leave it without an icon just to make it faster. And what's going to happen here is it'll give me an error. First of all, I'm going to delete these out of here because I'm going to fix this in a second. So the reason this is going to give me an error is because I didn't make the thing executable. It says permission denied. All right, to fix that, you go to your script, not the launcher, and open up the script itself and right click on it and hit properties and make this, allow this to be ran as a program. That's the only thing about creating new scripts versus copying scripts. When you copy scripts, it copies that with it. All you're doing is changing the name and the content. Now this will work. There we go. The launcher is a launcher. It just points to whatever you're doing. So I'm not going to let that finish. But if I wanted to edit this launcher, what's going to happen to here is as soon as I apply an icon or a comment or anything else, I'll just use that one for sake of argument. Because I altered the icon and nothing else, this will say untrusted launcher. And you mark it as executable and it takes off. Always test your scripts. Always test your launchers. And again, you can always move them to your panel, just like I did with these guys down here. You can substitute this with USB sticks. Just go back into your script files, and if you named your USB stick something different, then create another script by copying them and pasting them, and then renaming the tail end of the actual device name. That is extremely easy to do. If this is called USB1, then change the script file to USB1 and save it as something different. There is a save as command also. You can also do a copy, just like I did here. Hopefully you found this informative, folks, because writing scripts to do backups is pretty simple to do. Thank you for watching.